nestled high in the emerald hills, where the air was crisp and the morning smelled of darkest grass. Lay a small mountain village, untouched by time, existing in its own little world. It was a place where days were simple, marked by the sun's rise and fall. Aiden, a boy of 17, called this village his home. His days were spent in quiet solitude, herding sheep across the sprawling hills. He guided his flock to meadows, where the grass grew lush and thick. Humming melodies he had learned from his late mother, his songs danced with the wind. The villagers knew Aiden as a kind-hearted boy, always willing to lend a hand. But they often commented on his dreamy nature, saying he was always searching for something. Deep inside, Aiden felt a restless tug, a yearning for something more. It wasn't that he disliked his simple life, but he felt meant for something beyond the mountains. In the evenings, the village gathered around the fire, sharing food and tales of old times. Aiden's heart raced whenever the elders spoke of the forbidden forest beyond the farthest peak. The forest, alive with ancient magic, was said to be both beautiful and dangerous. No one who enters ever returns, warned the elders-in-law, serious voices. The stories painted it as a place of wonders and terrors, where shadows moved and whispers carried secrets. Yet, Aiden felt an unexplainable pull toward it, as though the forest called him in dreams. One day, while herding sheep, Aiden paused at a high ridge, gazing at the distant forest outline. Its dark treetops stretched endlessly, a sharp contrast to the bright green hills. For a moment, he imagined what lay beyond, his heart quickening with wonder. Dreaming again, Aiden teased a voice. It was Myra, his sharp-tongued friend. She often joined him on the hills, reading his thoughts like a book. "You're thinking about the forest, aren't you?" she asked, tossing a pebble down the hill. Aiden hesitated, then nodded. "Do you ever wonder what's out there?" he asked. Myra frowned. "Nothing good, if the stories are true. The village is safe, isn't that enough?" Aiden looked away, unsure how to explain. The forest felt like a puzzle he was meant to solve. "I don't know," he admitted. "It just feels like there's more. Like I'm supposed to find something." Mara sighed, her teasing smile fading. "Promise me you won't do anything foolish, Aiden." That night, under a sky of stars, Aiden stood at his window, gazing at the forest. The villagers saw the forest as a danger, but to Aiden, it was an invitation. Somewhere beyond those dark trees, something was waiting for him. And one day, he would find it. It was a rainy evening, and the village lay silent, shrouded in mist as raindrops drummed on rooftops. The usual warmth of the fire seemed distant, drowned by the storm's cold embrace. As villagers hurried to secure their homes, a dark figure emerged from the storm. The stranger wore a long cloak, dripping with rain, his face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hood. He carried an air of urgency, his boots squelching against the muddy ground as he approached. "Who are you?" one of the elders demanded, stepping forward despite the growing unease. The stranger pulled back his hood, revealing sharp eyes and a face weathered by time and hardship. "My name is Kyle," he said, his voice steady, carrying through the rain like a low rumble. "I come with a warning. A great storm is coming. One that will destroy everything in its path." The villagers exchanged uneasy glances, whispers breaking out among the crowd. "And why should we believe you?" a man asked, his voice laced with suspicion. Kyle's gaze hardened. "You don't have to believe me. But the signs are already here." He gestured to the sky, where dark clouds churned, their edges glowing ominously with green light. The only way to stop it, Kale continued, is to retrieve the heart of the forest. A hush fell over the crowd. Everyone knew what he meant, the forbidden forest. No one who enters the forest ever returns, an elder said, his voice trembling. Kale nodded solemnly. That's true, but the heart of the forest is your only hope. The villagers recoiled, their fear palpable. Most dismissed Kale as a madman or a liar. But in the back of the crowd, Aiden listened intently, his heart raced as Kale spoke. He didn't know why, but something in Kale's voice struck a chord deep within him. As the villagers began to disperse, muttering among themselves, Aiden approached Kale hesitantly. Is it true? Aiden asked, his voice barely audible. Can the heart really stop the storm? Kale turned to him, his eyes narrowing. You believe me, don't you? He said, almost surprised. Aiden nodded. I don't know why, but I feel like I have to do something. Kale studied him for a moment before replying. Then perhaps you're braver than the rest. The two stood in silence, the rain falling steadily around them, as the storm brewed on the horizon. Determined to save his village, Aiden packed a small bag that night. He placed a flask of water, some bread, and a wooden staff into the bag. His heart was heavy, but his resolve was firm. The storm couldn't be ignored. At dawn, Aiden stood at the edge of the forest, its entrance looming before him. The air was cold and damp, thick with fog that swirled like ghosts among the trees. Every instinct told him to turn back, but he stepped forward, refusing to waver. As he ventured deeper, the forest grew darker, its canopy blocking out the morning light. The trees seemed alive, their gnarled branches twisting like grasping fingers. Aiden gripped his staff tightly, his ears straining for the faintest sound. The whispers started softly at first, a murmuring that seemed to come from nowhere. They grew louder with each step, words he couldn't understand echoing around him. Stay focused, he muttered to himself, forcing his feet to keep moving forward. Suddenly, a low growl pierced the air, sending chills down his spine. From the shadows, a creature emerged, its form dark and shifting like smoke. Its eyes glowed an eerie yellow, fixing on Aiden with predatory intent. Aiden froze, his grip on the staff tightening. His heart pounded, but he didn't retreat. The creature lunged, swift and silent, its claws slashing through the air. Aiden raised his staff just in time, the wood vibrating from the impact. I won't give up, he whispered, pushing back against the creature's strength. With a sudden burst of determination, he swung the staff, forcing it to retreat. The creature snarled, circling him warily, its movements fluid and menacing. Aiden's breath came in quick gasps, but he held his ground, refusing to back down. The forest seemed to watch in silence, its whispers fading into an eerie stillness. Finally, the creature retreated into the shadows, its glowing eyes disappearing from view. Aiden stood motionless, his hands trembling, his mind racing with what had just happened. He exhaled shakily, lowering his staff, but his resolve burned brighter than ever. Whatever dangers lay ahead, he knew he couldn't turn back now. As Aiden ventured further, the forest seemed to come alive. The path grew narrow, tangled with roots that threatened to trip him at every step. The air was filled with strange sounds, rustling leaves and distant, haunting cries. Suddenly, he reached a roaring river, its current fierce and unrelenting. A single broken bridge stretched across, its planks weathered and unstable. Aiden hesitated, gripping his staff tightly. He tested the first plank with his foot. It creaked but held his weight. Step by step, he crossed carefully. Midway, a plank snapped beneath him, and he grabbed the rope to steady himself. His heart pounded as he climbed back up, refusing to let fear take hold. Reaching the other side, he exhaled deeply, grateful to have made it across. The forest didn't relent. Fierce winds arose, howling and tearing through the trees. Aiden shielded his face, pushing forward against the unyielding force. The winds seemed to whisper doubts, but he ignored them, step by step. When the winds finally calmed, Aiden found himself in a quiet clearing. A massive oak stood at its center, its branches stretching high above. Perched on one of the branches was an owl, its eyes sharp and knowing. "You've come far," the owl said, its voice deep and resonant. "But to proceed, you must solve my riddle. Fail, and you shall not pass." Aiden nodded, his determination unwavering. "Ask your riddle," he replied firmly. The owl tilted its head, then spoke. "I am always running, but never move. I have no mouth, yet I rule. What am I?" Aiden frowned, thinking hard. The answer was on the tip of his tongue. Finally, he looked up and said, "A river. The answer is a river." The owl's eyes gleamed, and it nodded approvingly. "You are correct. You may proceed," it said, spreading its wings wide. The massive oak parted, revealing a path, its destination hidden by shadows. Aiden stepped forward, his resolve stronger. The storm was coming, and time was short. After days of treacherous journeying, Aiden finally reached the cave. The entrance glowed faintly, casting an eerie light across the ground. Inside, a brilliant light shone from within, the heart of the forest floating in midair. It sparkled like a gem, its glow pulsing with an ancient power. But as Aiden stepped closer, a low growl echoed through the cave. A massive beast emerged from the shadows, its red eyes glowing with fury. Its fur was matted, and its claws scraped the cave floor. The beast snarled, its voice booming. "Why do you seek the heart?" Aiden stood frozen, fear gripping his heart. But he swallowed hard, remembering his mission. "I seek the heart to save my people," he said, his voice trembling but resolute. The beast let out a deafening roar, its teeth bared in a menacing snarl. Without warning, it lunged at Aiden, its massive body crashing toward him. Aiden barely dodged to the side, the ground shaking beneath the beast's weight. His heart raced as he scrambled to his feet, his staff held tightly in his hands. The beast circled him, eyes gleaming with malice, its growl reverberating off the walls. Aiden knew he couldn't fight this beast with strength alone. He needed to think fast. He reached into his bag, grabbing the vial of enchanted powder, the only thing the old man had given him for this moment. With a quick motion, he threw the powder into the air, creating a blinding flash of light. The beast howled, its vision temporarily blinded, giving Aiden a chance to act. He dashed forward, clutching his staff with both hands. In one swift motion, he struck the beast with all his might. The blow landed, but the beast only staggered, its eyes narrowing in fury. Aiden didn't hesitate. He ducked low, ready to dodge the next attack. The beast roared again, its claws swiping dangerously close. Aiden rolled to the side, barely escaping the swipe. Breathing heavily, he realized he couldn't keep this up for long. But just as the beast was about to charge again, Aiden saw his opportunity. He leapt forward, aiming directly for the heart of the forest. With a final burst of strength, he grabbed the heart, pulling it toward him. The beast roared in frustration, but Aiden stood firm, clutching the heart. He had done it. The heart was his. Now, with the heart in his hands, Aiden had one final task to complete. Aiden stood firm, the heart glowing in his hands. But the beast wasn't done yet. It howled in fury, its massive form trembling with rage. Aiden could feel the weight of the moment, the storm outside still raging. But he knew now that brute strength wouldn't win this fight. He had learned it from the trials. He recalled the riddle of the owl, the tricks of the river, the lessons hidden in each challenge. The beast charged again, its eyes burning with hunger and fury. Aiden quickly dodged to the side, his mind racing for a plan. Then it struck him, the narrow tunnel from earlier. He turned and ran, leading the beast toward the entrance of the tunnel. The beast roared, following blindly, its massive body crashing through the cave. Aiden barely made it through the tunnel's entrance. The beast held on his heels. As he reached the narrowest point, he could feel the beast's breath on his back. Then, with a loud crash, the beast was wedged inside the tunnel. It roared in frustration, unable to move forward or backward. Aiden stepped back, his heart pounding, realizing the beast was trapped. He turned toward the glowing heart in his hands, its light flickering gently. The beast's struggles echoed through the tunnel, but Aiden knew he had won. With a final breath, he held the heart close to his chest. The storm outside began to quiet, and the air felt lighter. The beast's roars faded into silence, and Aiden allowed himself a moment of peace. But the victory wasn't complete yet. Aiden still had a long journey ahead. With the heart of the forest secured, he turned back toward the village. The storm was over, but the trials of the forest were just the beginning. Aiden couldn't help but wonder what else awaited him on the path ahead. Aiden emerged from the forest, his heart still racing from the trials he had faced. But as he looked toward the village, a fierce wind greeted him. The storm that had been threatening for so long had finally arrived. Lightning cracked through the sky, and the wind howled, tearing through the trees. Aiden clutched the heart tightly, feeling its power pulse in his hands. He stepped forward, his voice rising above the storm. "Stop this storm," he shouted, his voice full of determination. The heart of the forest began to glow, its light brighter than ever before. A burst of light shot from the heart, and the winds started to calm. The sky, once dark and full of rage, began to clear. The villagers, who had been hiding in fear, emerged from their homes. They stared in awe as the storm faded, and the first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds. A cheer rose from the crowd, their voices filled with relief and joy. But Aiden, exhausted from his journey, collapsed to his knees. The heart of the forest slipped from his hands, its glow fading as the storm fully passed. The villagers rushed to his side, lifting him up and cheering for his bravery. But Aiden could barely keep his eyes open, the exhaustion from his trials overwhelming him. He had saved them, but now he needed rest. The storm had passed, but Aiden's journey was far from over. As the villagers celebrated, Aiden's thoughts drifted to what lay ahead. The heart of the forest had saved the village, but its true purpose remained a mystery. Aiden knew that there were still many challenges ahead, and that he had only just begun. But for now, he allowed himself a moment of peace. When Aiden awoke, he found himself lying on a soft bed, the sunlight filtering through the window. The village was calm now, its people no longer fearing the storm. As Aiden slowly sat up, he noticed the stranger standing by his side. The man's cloak was as dark as ever, his presence as mysterious as it had been when they first met. "You have proven your courage," the stranger said, his voice deep and steady. Aiden blinked in surprise, unsure of what the man meant. The stranger smiled slightly, then stepped forward, his gaze intense. He reached into his cloak and pulled at the heart of the forest, its light still glowing softly. The heart is not just a gem, the stranger continued, his voice calm and full of meaning. It is a symbol of hope, a powerful force tied to the balance of nature. Aiden's eyes widened, hearing this truth for the first time. The stranger continued, his voice growing more serious. Your bravery awakened its true power, the power to protect, to heal, and to restore. Aiden's heart swelled with pride, but there was a tinge of sadness in his eyes. He had saved his village, but he wondered what other challenges awaited him. The storm is gone, the stranger said, noticing Aiden's quiet thoughts. Your village is safe, thanks to you. Aiden nodded, his thoughts still racing. Is this the end? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. The stranger shook his head, a slight smile on his lips. Your journey has just begun, Aiden. There are many more adventures ahead. Aiden felt a sense of resolve building inside him, stronger than before. Whatever the future held, he was ready. He had proven his courage, and now, he was ready to embrace whatever came next. The village was alive with celebration, the air filled with laughter and music. Aiden stood in the center, the villagers surrounding him, all cheering his name. They hailed him as a hero, and rightfully so, for he had saved them all. But as Aiden stood there, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The adventure had transformed him, shaping him into someone new. The quiet life of a shepherd no longer seemed enough. He had seen too much, experienced too much. He felt a pull, a desire to help others, to bring the heart's light to those who needed it. The villagers cheered, but Aiden's thoughts drifted to the road ahead. He had learned the true meaning of courage, and it wasn't just about facing danger. It was about the strength to change, to follow a new path, no matter how uncertain. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, Aiden made a decision. He would leave the village. He would travel, carrying the heart's light to those who needed it most. He turned away from the festivities, his heart full of resolve. The villagers didn't understand, but they would one day. For now, Aiden was ready to begin his journey, to help those beyond the village. The road ahead would be long, but Aiden felt ready to face whatever came next. He had proven his courage, and now, he was ready to live for something greater. With the heart in his hands, Aiden stepped into the unknown. Aiden took one last look at the village, the place he had always called home. The villagers stood together, waving their hands, their faces filled with pride. They had seen his bravery, and now, they saw the man he had become. As Aiden looked at them, he felt a surge of warmth in his chest. He wasn't the same young shepherd who had left, unaware of the challenges ahead. The storm had tested him, but it had also shaped him into something stronger. The heart of the forest, still glowing in his hands, reminded him of his journey and the lessons learned. His heart was full of gratitude for the path he had walked, and for the people he had met along the way. The storm had revealed his true self, someone who could face anything with courage and heart. He smiled, knowing that no matter what came next, he was ready. With each step, he moved forward, carrying the light of the heart with him. The journey was far from over, but Aiden knew he would never walk alone. For the heart was not just a gem, it was a part of him, a reminder of who he had become. And as he walked towards the horizon, he carried with him the hope for a better tomorrow. The journey had only just begun, but Aiden was no longer afraid.